It's time for episode 25 of the Mystical Times blog podcast with me, Michelle Eve. This episode is called Gloucestershire's Ghost House, and it was a piece I researched and wrote for the website Spooky Isles. There are areas in the county of Gloucestershire that are quite beautiful. Some wooded, some open landscapes, mined quarries, lots of sweeping hills and meandering waterways, all which have played their part in how the county has evolved. Part of that landscape are the ghosts that haunt the areas and the houses of those who have made Gloucestershire their home. The haunted house I want to tell you about was a large house in Lidbrook, which is part of the Forest of Dean and Wye Valley. The original house was built on a hill, but was torn down when the railway was put into place so that the limestone was quarried could be transported. Another house was built further away from the train track. The house was called Hill View and was built in the 1870s. It was to become later known by the locals as the Ghost House. It is said that a previous resident of the house, a retired lighthouse keeper, had seen a female ghost dressed in a riding habit, and one time he had even seen her riding a horse on the grounds of the house. In fact, this house became the centre of those looking for evidence of ghosts, and for spiritualists who were to go on and build a small church nearby to the ghost house property. This group of people would also become involved when the new owners purchased the house. It was in the 1930s that the house was sold to a Mr. George Jones, and he planned to live there with his wife, teenage son, and their 4-year-old adopted daughter. The house needed alterations, so Mrs. Jones and the children stayed away whilst Mr. Jones, with the help of local builders and decorators, undertook the renovations. The Joneses renamed the house and called it Biet Kiber, which means big house in Arabic. Mr. Jones had been travelling the world in his working life and had held an official post, working for the Egyptian government. It was one autumn morning when a decorator was working on a room upstairs that Mr. Jones, who had just walked through the back door of the house after gathering firewood, saw a young woman wearing a brown riding habit. She entered the open front door and ascended the stairs. She stopped halfway and stared down at him. Mr. Jones thought she had come to see the decorator, so he placed down the firewood that he had been collecting and went upstairs. When he got to the room where the decorator was and asked after the woman whom he had seen, the decorator laughed, as he had thought Mr. Jones was joking with him, as no woman had come up the stairs, let alone visit him. Mr. Jones was rather taken aback at this, and as he recalled what the woman looked like, he realised that all the floorboards were bare, and she had made no sound as she walked. Mr. Jones described the woman as early 20s, with dark long hair and a rosy complexion. He was to see her 2 more times after this, always in the same area of the house and always in the morning hours. He was afraid to tell his wife what he had seen, as he didn't want to scare her. Mrs. Jones later said that a relative had recently told her that a woman was meant to haunt the house, and Mr. Jones replied, "I know, as I've seen her." Mrs. Jones thought her husband was joking, but saw from his facial expression that he wasn't. The family finally moved into the house, and the ghostly woman was never seen by any adults. It was only the 4-year-old daughter who did see her. She would ask Mrs. Jones, "Who is the lady in the other room?" And when they investigated the other room, no one was there. The playing of harps was also heard within the house, despite there being no such instrument in the property. Word soon got around about the ghost and the ghostly music, and the Joneses were then approached by the local spiritualist group, who wanted to hold a séance to help find out who the ghost was and what she wanted. The group believed this spirit to be earthbound and strong to appear during the day, so they wanted to help move her on. The spiritualist group held several séances at the house. At the first séance, nothing happened, but in a later séance, a strange, disembodied voice was heard by all the attendees. In the dark, the voice said, "You must be brave, there is nothing to fear. You will see it again, and you must meet it halfway." Whether this meant that one of the family was to meet the ghost halfway up the stairs, it is not known. Mr. Jones also undertook his own investigations and found out the previous owner, a Mr. Russell, had an adult son who had been engaged to a young woman, but that young woman had died when riding a horse during a hunt. Could she have been this ghost? Although I can find no further reports on this particular haunting, I did find out that the small church, built by the spiritualists, is said to have been burnt down by a mysterious fire in the 1950s. It was also documented that after this happened, a local resident was taking a walk on a path by these buildings and was about to use the stile when he saw a young woman, who he described as wearing a dark billowing dress with a hood, approach him, so he got out of her way so she could use the stile first. She climbed over the stile, and when she was over, the man did the same thing, but when he did, the woman had completely vanished. Was this the same ghost that haunted the Biet-Kibert house? And were the hauntings so vivid due to the area having a vast amount of limestone underfoot? Limestone is attributed to have paranormal properties, which gives some credence to the stone tape theory, which is where a ghostly figure repeatedly does the same thing over and over again, similar to a recording. That's all for this episode, and I do hope you enjoyed hearing about the spooky happenings in Gloucestershire. For the next episode, episode 26, the Christmas episode, I'll be sharing a ghostly Christmas experience with you. Till next time.